A kingdom can survive famine. It can survive war. It can even survive a cruel king. But no kingdom survives when an ancient prophecy finally awakens. On the coldest night Ironfang had witnessed in decades, every wolf in the northern mountains suddenly fell silent. No howl, no movement, only an unnatural stillness spreading through the frozen forests. Even the veteran hunters stopped breathing, because every legend carried the same warning. When the moon wolves fall silent, destiny has already chosen its queen. Far beyond the castle walls, beneath a sky drowning beneath black storm clouds, a lone Omega girl stumbled through waist-deep snow. Her shoes had long since fallen apart. Blood marked every footprint behind her. Slave hunters searched somewhere in the darkness. Each bark of their hounds echoed closer, closer, closer. She had stopped praying hours ago. Hope required strength. Strength was something life had stolen from Elara years before. The freezing wind sliced across her torn dress as another wave of exhaustion nearly forced her onto her knees. Her stomach growled painfully. Her hands trembled. Every scar on her body reminded her of another master, another punishment, another home that had never truly been home. I just need somewhere warm. The whisper disappeared into the storm. Ahead, hidden beneath broken wooden beams and layers of drifting snow, stood an abandoned royal horse stable. Its roof sagged with age. The doors hung crooked on rusted hinges. No light, no voices, no life. Perfect. She pushed the heavy door open. The smell of old hay, damp wood, and forgotten memories surrounded her. Broken stalls lined both sides. Empty feeding buckets lay scattered across the floor. Somewhere above, loose boards creaked beneath the relentless wind. The place felt abandoned, yet strangely peaceful. Elara collapsed into a pile of dry straw without another thought. Within seconds, sleep claimed her. She never noticed another presence already hiding inside the stable. Two silver eyes slowly opened within the darkness. Watching, waiting, not hunting, protecting. Far away, iron hooves thundered across frozen earth. Dozens of royal soldiers rode through the storm. Black cloaks whipped violently behind them. Torchlight cut through the snowfall like rivers of fire. At their center rode the man every kingdom feared. Alpha King Kael Draven. The king without mercy. His sword had ended rebellions. His commands had destroyed armies. His name alone made enemies surrender before battles even began. Tonight, he hunted only one creature, the legendary moon wolf. A beast blamed for slaughtering hunters across the northern forests. No one noticed. The wolf was not running anymore. She had already reached the girl destiny had chosen. And before dawn, the most feared alpha in history would witness something no king had ever survived. A monster would kneel before an abandoned Omega. The storm had become a living creature. It clawed across Ironfang's mountains with icy teeth, howling through ancient pine forests until every branch bent beneath its rage. Snow swallowed the roads leading to the capital, erasing every footprint almost as quickly as it appeared. Some believed storms like this carried spirits. Others believed they carried death. For Elara, it carried both. She staggered through the wilderness with her head lowered against the wind, barely able to keep her eyes open. Every breath burned her lungs like shards of frozen glass. Hunger twisted painfully inside her stomach, but it was no longer the worst pain she carried. Pain had become familiar. Pain meant she was still alive. Behind her, distant barking echoed through the forest. The slave hunters had not given up. They couldn't have gone far. Their voices disappeared beneath thunder before returning stronger. Spread out. Hounds. Find the Omega. Elara forced herself forward. Her legs threatened to collapse beneath her. She had escaped 3 days earlier from Lord Varric's estate after years of silent servitude. Every scar hidden beneath her sleeves told a different story of cruelty. She owned nothing. No family. No name anyone cared to remember. Only one impossible dream. Freedom. A sudden gust of wind nearly knocked her to the ground. Through the swirling snow, she noticed the outline of an old wooden structure standing alone near the cliffs below Ironfang Palace. An abandoned stable. Its doors leaned crookedly against broken hinges. Most travelers would have feared entering such a place. Elara felt only relief. With trembling fingers, she pushed the heavy doors open. The stale scent of hay mixed with damp earth welcomed her like an old friend. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the roof, painting silver lines across abandoned stalls. The silence inside felt strangely alive, almost protective. She dragged herself toward the deepest corner, gathering loose straw into a small bed before curling into herself. Her body shook violently. For the first time in years, no one shouted, no chains rattled, no footsteps approached, only silence. Tears slipped quietly from beneath closed eyes, not from sadness, from exhaustion. Within moments, she fell asleep. Outside, the storm continued. Inside, something ancient stirred. Deep within the shadows of the final stall, a massive silver wolf slowly lifted her head. She was unlike any beast ever recorded. Her fur shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight despite being soaked with blood. A broken spear remained lodged deep within her shoulder. Each breath came slower than the last. Yet her greatest burden was not the wound. Her swollen belly rose and fell heavily. She was carrying life. The wolf studied the sleeping girl without hostility. Instead, recognition. Slowly, she limped closer. Every movement sent fresh blood onto the wooden floor. She lowered herself beside Elara, surrounding the sleeping Omega with the warmth of her enormous body. The girl's trembling slowly stopped. The wolf closed her eyes. Outside, the hunters finally arrived. Not the slave hunters. The king's hunters. Torchlight flashed through the trees. Steel armor reflected orange against the snow. Captain Rowan knelt beside enormous paw prints disappearing toward the stable. "My king, she's inside." King Kael Draven dismounted without a word. Even standing still, he commanded the air itself. His black cloak snapped violently in the wind. A scar crossed one side of his jaw, making his already intimidating expression seem carved from stone. Years of war had erased hesitation from his movements. One command, one strike, one victory. That was how kingdoms survived. He unsheathed his sword. The polished steel caught the torchlight. "Open it." The stable doors burst inward. Soldiers flooded inside. Weapons immediately rose. Then, everything stopped. There she was, the legendary Moon Wolf. But instead of attacking, she remained lying beside a sleeping Omega girl. One soldier whispered, "My king, she's guarding her." Another tightened his grip. "Kill it before it moves." Kael stepped forward. His sharp gray eyes never left the beast. The wolf slowly stood. Growls echoed through the stable. Soldiers raised crossbows. The air became unbearably tense. One wrong movement, and blood would cover the floor. The wolf looked directly into Kael's eyes. Ancient intelligence burned within them. Then, she did the impossible. She lowered her massive head, not in weakness, not in surrender, in reverence, toward the sleeping girl. Gasps echoed around the stable. Several soldiers instinctively stepped backward. Captain Rowan stared in disbelief. Impossible. Kael had witnessed monsters, demons, alpha beasts. Nothing behaved like this. The wolf was acknowledging the Omega as someone above herself. An old memory surfaced from the darkest corner of his mind. A forgotten prophecy his mother had once whispered before bedtime. When the moon guardian bows, the true queen has awakened. He had dismissed it as a fairy tale. Now, the impossible stood before him. One nervous soldier lifted his crossbow. "My king, order us." Kael remained motionless. The wolf never looked away from Elara. Finally, the king lowered his sword. "No one fires." The command shocked every soldier. "My king," I said. His voice became colder than the storm outside. "No one touches the wolf." At that exact moment, Elara slowly opened her eyes. She blinked once, twice, then saw dozens of armed soldiers surrounding her. Fear exploded across her face. She instinctively tried to crawl backward. The silver wolf immediately stepped between Elara and every weapon in the room. A low protective growl filled the stable. Kael watched the terrified Omega, the dying wolf, and the impossible bond connecting them. Then the wolf suddenly cried out in pain. A painful, desperate howl echoed through the stable. Blood spread beneath her. Her legs buckled. Captain Rowan's eyes widened. "My king!" The wolf collapsed onto the hay. Another cry escaped her.
Long.
Agonizing. Elara forgot her own fear. Without thinking, she crawled toward the enormous beast. The soldiers shouted in alarm, but the wolf looked only at her. Then another contraction shook the creature's entire body. Kael realized the truth. The legendary moon wolf wasn't preparing to attack. She was about to give birth. And every prophecy ever buried beneath Ironfang's history was about to awaken. For several long seconds, no one moved. Only the storm dared to make a sound. Snow hissed through the broken roof, drifting slowly onto the stable floor where crimson blood spread beneath the enormous silver wolf. Her powerful body trembled violently, each contraction stealing another piece of the strength she had fought so desperately to preserve. The royal soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the monster they had ridden through the mountains to kill. This was a mother dying while trying to protect her unborn child. Elara forgot the swords surrounding her, forgot the king standing only a few steps away, forgot the hunters who had chased her through frozen forests. All she could see were the wolf's frightened silver eyes. Eyes filled not with rage, but with pain. She crawled carefully through the straw until she knelt beside the great creature. Her hands trembled as she reached forward, stopping only inches away. She had spent her childhood caring for wounded horses and abandoned dogs inside noble estates. Animals had always understood her in ways people never had. Still, this was no ordinary beast. The wolf lowered her head, waiting, as though she had already decided who she trusted. Elara slowly rested her hand against the wolf's blood-soaked neck. The moment their skin touched, a strange warmth pulsed beneath her fingertips. Not heat. Recognition. The wolf released a deep breath, and the savage tension inside her body eased almost instantly. Captain Rowan stared in disbelief. His voice barely escaped. She calmed her. Another soldier shook his head. No beast has ever allowed a human to touch it. Kael remained silent. His gray eyes never left the girl. He had expected screams.
Blood. Chaos.
Instead, the impossible unfolded before him with quiet grace. Even the horses hiding inside neighboring stalls stopped their restless movements. The entire stable seemed to hold its breath. Another violent contraction tore through the wolf's body. She cried out, not with anger, with desperate exhaustion. Elara leaned closer, gently stroking the thick silver fur. "It's all right." Her voice barely rose above the storm. "I'm here." No command, no magic, only kindness. The wolf looked into her eyes and believed her. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. Lightning illuminated the stable through broken beams overhead, painting everyone in flashes of white and shadow. The palace healers finally arrived, carrying medical satchels and enchanted herbs. One look at the wolf made them freeze. "No." The oldest healer stepped backward. "That creature is cursed. If we get close, she'll tear us apart." Another whispered nervously, "She's the moon wolf." Kael's expression hardened. "Treat her." The healer swallowed. "My king, we cannot." Before another excuse escaped his lips, the wolf released another agonized howl. Elara looked up. "They're wasting time." Without waiting for permission, she tore the sleeve from her already damaged dress and wrapped it around the spear protruding from the wolf's shoulder. Blood immediately soaked through the cloth. The wolf winced, but never growled, never snapped. She trusted only one person. Kael felt something unfamiliar settle inside his chest. Respect.
No.
Something deeper. He watched this fragile Omega kneeling beside a legendary predator, without fear. Not because she was brave. Because compassion mattered more to her than survival. How could someone who had clearly suffered so much still choose kindness? He no longer understood her. Another contraction came. Stronger. The wolf's claws dug deeply into the wooden floor. Cracks splintered beneath her weight. Elara placed both hands gently against the wolf's face. "Look at me." The silver eyes obeyed. "Breathe." The words sounded almost like a lullaby. Slowly, painfully, the wolf followed her rhythm.
In, out.
Again. The stable grew impossibly quiet. Even the soldiers unconsciously matched their breathing to Elara's calm voice.
Then,
life entered the world. A tiny cry echoed across the stable.
small.
Fragile. Beautiful. Wrapped in silver white fur lay a newborn wolf pup no larger than Elara's forearm. Its fur shimmered beneath the moonlight filtering through broken roof beams. But what stole every breath inside the stable was the mark upon its forehead. A glowing silver crescent moon. The symbol pulsed once, then faded beneath its fur. Captain Rowan stepped backward. "I've seen that mark before." His face turned pale. "The Royal Archives." One elderly soldier whispered. "The Moon Guardian?" Kael slowly lowered his sword completely. He suddenly remembered another forgotten line from his mother's stories. When the last guardian gives birth beneath the broken roof, the kingdom's future opens its eyes. The wolf nudged her newborn gently toward Elara. The tiny pup stumbled clumsily through the straw before collapsing against the girl's lap. Its tiny nose twitched. Without hesitation, it curled against her heartbeat, as if it had always belonged there. Elara smiled through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Hello." The pup gave a tiny whimper. Its little tail moved once. The wolf watched them quietly, satisfied. Her purpose had been fulfilled. But death was already waiting. Her breathing became shallow. Blood continued spreading beneath her body. Elara immediately noticed. "No." She pressed both hands against the wound. "No, stay with me." The wolf looked into her eyes. There was no fear anymore. Only peace. Slowly, she lifted her head one final time. Her nose gently touched Elara's forehead. The instant they made contact, everything changed. Silver light exploded between them. Not blinding.
Soft.
Beautiful. Like moonlight flowing through water. Ancient symbols circled around Elara's body before disappearing beneath her skin. The stable shook. The wooden walls groaned. Outside, every wolf across the northern mountains lifted its head simultaneously. Then, one after another, they howled. Thousands of voices. One ancient chorus. The sound rolled across valleys and forests until even the palace itself seemed to tremble. Inside the stable, every torch suddenly burned with silver flames. The soldiers looked around in terror. "What is happening?" "The moon." Someone pointed upward. Through the broken roof, clouds separated. The full moon glowed brighter than anyone had ever witnessed. The silver light slowly faded. Elara gasped. A strange warmth now lived inside her chest. Something ancient. Something alive. The wolf lowered her head into Elara's lap one last time. Her tired eyes remained fixed upon the young Omega, as if memorizing the face destiny had chosen.
Then,
she exhaled softly, and never breathed again. Silence. Complete silence. The storm itself seemed to mourn. Elara wrapped both arms around the wolf's massive neck, unable to stop crying. "You protected me." Her voice broke, when no one else ever did. Across the stable, even hardened soldiers lowered their eyes. No warrior celebrated this hunt. No victory existed here. Only sacrifice. The tiny white pup whimpered beside its mother's still body. It nudged her gently. Again. Again. Waiting for movement that would never come. Elara lifted the trembling pup into her arms. Immediately, it stopped crying. Its tiny heartbeat settled against hers. One healer cautiously stepped forward carrying a bowl of warm goat's milk. "Perhaps," he whispered, "the pup will eat." Elara carefully lowered the bowl. The little wolf sniffed it, turned away. Another healer tried fresh meat. The pup ignored it. One by one, every attempt failed. Finally, the newborn buried itself deeper against Elara's chest. The oldest healer stared for several moments before speaking. It has already chosen. Kael looked toward the girl. And if separated? The healer hesitated. It will most likely die. The king's jaw tightened. Outside, dawn slowly began breaking across Ironfang. Inside the stable, whispers had already begun. She's bewitched the beast. No ordinary Omega could do this. This is forbidden. Hidden near the doorway, a woman dressed in elegant black velvet silently watched everything unfold. Lady Seraphine. Unlike the frightened soldiers, she was not shocked. She was calculating. Her emerald eyes rested upon the crescent mark that had briefly appeared between moonlight and magic. Recognition flashed across her face. She had seen that symbol once before. Inside a forbidden book sealed beneath the royal archives. One sentence echoed inside her mind. When the last moon guardian awakens, every false queen shall fall. For the first time in years, Lady Seraphine felt something she had almost forgotten.
Fear.
As Kael turned toward Elara, preparing to decide her fate, neither of them noticed the ancient stone hidden deep beneath Blackthorne Castle. A crack spread across its surface. Then, the forgotten relic awakened. A pulse of silver light surged through the foundations of the kingdom, and something buried beneath the throne room opened its eyes. Morning arrived over Blackthorne Castle, but the palace never truly welcomed daylight. The towering walls of black obsidian swallowed the sun, casting long shadows across stone courtyards where soldiers trained in disciplined silence. Iron banners bearing the royal wolf crest fluttered above the battlements, their dark fabric snapping violently beneath the northern wind. This was not a palace built for comfort. It was built for fear. Every corridor echoed with discipline. Every servant lowered their eyes. Every noble measured each word before speaking, because one mistake could reach the ears of the Alpha King. And Mercy had not lived inside these walls for many years. Elara stood quietly near the eastern courtyard, cradling the tiny white wolf against her chest. The pup had slept peacefully since dawn, only in her arms. The moment another servant attempted to hold him, he whimpered until Elara returned. Word spread quickly. Some called it miraculous. Most called it dangerous. As she crossed the courtyard carrying a basket of fresh herbs assigned by the palace healers, whispers followed her like shadows. The beast chose her. I heard she used forbidden magic. No ordinary Omega controls moonwolves. Another servant lowered her voice. Perhaps that's why the king spared her. Laughter followed. Pull.
Sharp.
Elara kept walking. Years of humiliation had taught her one lesson. People eventually grew tired of hurting someone who refused to answer. Still, every whisper landed somewhere deep inside her heart. High above the courtyard, Kael watched everything from the palace balcony. His expression remained unreadable. Captain Rowan approached quietly. The council demands the girl be removed. Kael never looked away. They fear her. They fear what she represents. Kael rested both hands against the cold stone railing. What exactly does she represent? Rowan hesitated. No one knows, Your Majesty. Silence followed. Below them, Elara stopped beside an injured stable horse. The old mare trembled violently as servants struggled to clean a deep wound along her leg. She's becoming aggressive. We may have to put her down. The frightened horse kicked wildly. Servants jumped backward. The animal's terrified cries echoed through the courtyard. Without thinking, Elara slowly walked forward. Careful. Someone grabbed her sleeve. It'll kill you. She gently pulled free. No. Her voice remained soft. It's afraid. The courtyard fell silent. Step by step, she approached the mare. The horse pinned its ears. Its breathing became frantic. Elara stopped only an arm's length away. She never reached immediately, never forced contact. Instead, she simply waited, letting the frightened animal decide. Several long moments passed.
Then,
the mare slowly lowered her head. Elara smiled. There you are. She gently touched its neck. The trembling stopped, like ice melting beneath spring sunlight. Gasps spread among the servants. Even Captain Rowan stared upward toward his king. Kael said nothing. Yet something inside him shifted again. The same impossible calm he had witnessed inside the stable. It wasn't luck. Animals trusted her, not because she controlled them, because they felt safe beside her. A feeling Kael himself had almost forgotten existed. That evening, the palace nursery echoed with tiny laughter. Not human laughter. The little wolf pup chased feathers scattered across an old woven carpet while Elara watched nearby. The forgotten nursery had once belonged to Kael's unborn child. No servant entered anymore. The room had remained untouched for 6 years. Dust-covered wooden toys. A tiny cradle still rested beneath the window. No one dared remove it. No one dared speak of it. Elara had discovered the room accidentally while following the curious pup. She gently dusted the old furniture without realizing whose memories lived there. The wolf pup climbed clumsily into the empty cradle before rolling onto his back, paws waving through the air. For the first time in weeks, Elara laughed. A small laugh. Quiet.
Real.
Outside the doorway, someone froze.
Kael.
He had returned, as he did every evening, believing the room empty.
Instead,
He found life inside a place haunted by death. His chest tightened. The sound of laughter echoed against memories he had buried beneath years of discipline. He remembered another woman smiling here. Another future stolen before it began. His fingers unconsciously tightened around the doorway. Elara suddenly noticed him. The laughter disappeared. She immediately stood. "I am sorry, Your Majesty." She bowed quickly. "I didn't know this room belonged to someone." Kael remained silent. His eyes wandered toward the cradle. The tiny wolf pup looked directly at him, without fear, without challenge, then happily wagged its tail. The king slowly entered. His heavy boots echoed against wooden floors untouched for years. Elara stepped aside. "I'll leave." "Stay." The single word surprised even him. She looked up. Kael stared toward the old cradle. "My son." His voice almost disappeared. "Never slept there." Silence filled the room. Elara understood immediately. She looked toward the cradle with new eyes. Not abandoned. Grieving. "I'm sorry." Simple words. No grand speech. No forced comfort. Only understanding. Kael closed his eyes briefly. Most people avoid speaking about him. "I think." Elara answered carefully. "They're afraid of hurting you." His expression darkened. "They should fear disappointing me. But disappointment heals." She looked toward the empty cradle. "Silence doesn't." Kael slowly turned toward her. No one had spoken to him that way since becoming king.
Not boldly.
Not carelessly. Simply honestly. For several long moments, neither spoke. The room itself seemed to breathe around them. The tiny wolf pup yawned loudly before curling inside the cradle. The unexpected sound broke the silence. Elara smiled again. This time, Kael almost did too. Almost. Days became weeks. Without either of them noticing, routine quietly replaced coincidence. Each morning, Kael found reasons to inspect the stables. Elara happened to be there. Each afternoon, the king's patrol mysteriously passed through palace gardens, where Elara often cared for injured birds. Each evening, the wolf pup somehow escaped into whichever corridor Kael happened to walk. Captain Rowan eventually noticed. "You've inspected the stables 7 days in a row." Kael kept walking. The horses required discipline. The horses seemed perfectly disciplined. Silence. Rowan hid a smile. The king noticed. "Speak." "I've served you 18 years. Rowan folded his arms. "I've never seen you inspect flowers before." Kael stopped walking. "I wasn't inspecting flowers." "No." Rowan nodded slowly. "You were watching the gardener." Kael gave him a single cold glance. Rowan wisely changed the subject. Not everyone welcomed these changes. High inside her private chambers, Lady Seraphine stood before a wall covered in ancient maps, forgotten bloodlines, and royal family records. One particular page remained open. The Moon Guardian prophecy. She slowly traced the faded ink with one elegant finger. "When compassion softens the true alpha." She skipped ahead. The eternal bond begins before either heart understands its name. Her jaw tightened. So, she whispered, it has already begun. Behind her, a hooded messenger entered quietly. The council grows suspicious. Seraphine smiled.
Good.
The king spends increasing amounts of time near the Omega. Her smile disappeared. And she? Still innocent. Innocent people, Seraphine murmured, are the easiest to destroy. She approached the fireplace where fresh parchment waited. Carefully, patiently, she began forging royal correspondence using ink identical to the king's private seal. One letter, one signature, one lie. Enough to make loyalty appear like treason. Enough to separate two hearts before either recognized love. The trap had begun. That same night, Elara walked alone through the moonlit palace gardens carrying sleeping herbs toward the royal infirmary. The white wolf pup trotted happily beside her. She paused beside a frozen fountain. The moon reflected across the ice like polished silver. She smiled softly. For the first time since childhood, she didn't feel completely alone. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. Kael stood several feet away beneath the winter moon. Neither spoke. Words suddenly felt unnecessary. The cold wind carried strands of Elara's dark hair across her face. Without thinking, Kael took one slow step forward, then another. His hand almost lifted, almost brushed the snow from her shoulder. Almost. A palace bell suddenly rang.
Once. Twice.
3 times. An emergency summons. Captain Rowan appeared running across the courtyard. My king. Kael immediately turned. What happened? Rowan's face had gone pale. A confidential military document has disappeared from the royal archives. His breathing grew heavier. And he looked toward Elara. A witness claims they saw the Omega leaving the archive corridors. Kael's heartbeat stopped for a single devastating moment. Because deep inside the royal archives, Lady Seraphine quietly smiled. The first piece of her betrayal had fallen perfectly into place. The palace bells did not ring for celebration. They rang for judgment. Their heavy echoes rolled through every corridor of Blackthorne Castle like the heartbeat of an approaching execution. Servants abandoned their duties. Soldiers rushed toward the grand council hall. Nobles whispered nervously behind jeweled masks. Something terrible had happened, and everyone already knew who would be blamed. Elara stood alone outside the council chamber. The white wolf pup paced nervously around her feet, occasionally pressing his small body against her leg, as though sensing the storm gathering beyond the great iron doors. She could hear angry voices inside. Accusations. Arguments. Her own name repeated over and over. Her hands tightened around the folds of her simple dress. She had never entered the council chamber before. Only nobles crossed those doors. Only royalty spoke beneath the ancient throne. Yet today, an orphan Omega would stand before the most powerful people in the kingdom. Not as a guest, as a criminal. The enormous doors slowly opened. A guard's cold voice echoed through the hallway. Bring in Elara. The grand council hall felt colder than the winter outside. Towering obsidian pillars stretched toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Hundreds of candles burned along the walls, yet none seemed capable of warming the room. At the center stood the Iron Throne. Upon it sat Alpha King Kael Draven. His expression revealed nothing. No anger. No compassion. Only the perfect control expected of a ruler. Yet beneath that calm exterior, his heart was at war. Because for the first time in years, he desperately wanted the accusation before him to be false. Lady Seraphine stepped gracefully into the center of the chamber. She wore black silk embroidered with silver wolves, every movement carefully calculated. Her voice carried just enough sadness to sound sincere. My king. She lowered her head respectfully. It pains me to present evidence against someone you showed mercy. Kael remained silent. She lifted several sealed letters. The royal archives were breached last night. A servant carried the letters toward the throne. The kingdom's northern battle plans have disappeared. Another murmur swept across the chamber. Seraphine continued. And these, she held up another parchment, were discovered hidden beneath the Omega girl's bed. Gasps erupted throughout the hall. Elara's eyes widened. What? She took one confused step forward. I've never seen those. Her voice trembled. I don't even know how to read military maps. Seraphine sighed softly. Of course you would say that. I swear. You swear many things. Her interruption came gently, almost kindly, which somehow hurt even more. The court began whispering. A servant stealing battle plans. Perhaps she serves another kingdom. I always knew something was unnatural about that girl. The words spread like poison. Captain Rowan stepped forward. My king. His voice remained steady. No soldier witnessed Lady Elara entering restricted archives. Seraphine smiled. No soldier. She looked toward an elderly librarian. But perhaps someone else did. The frightened old man slowly approached. His hands shook violently. He swallowed hard. I saw someone wearing the servant's cloak leaving the archives shortly before sunrise. Elara stared at him. It wasn't me. The old man lowered his eyes. I believed it was.
Believed.
Not new. But belief was enough for frightened people. Kael's fingers tightened around the arm of the throne. He wanted certainty, not assumptions. Yet everything placed before him painted the same devastating picture. The forged letters, the missing maps, the witness. Every piece fit together. Too perfectly. Elara looked directly at Kael. Not at the throne. Not at the king. At the man who had once lowered his sword to protect her. You know me. Silence filled the hall. You know I would never betray anyone. For one impossible second, the council disappeared. The throne vanished. There was only the frightened Omega, and the man whose heart had slowly begun trusting again. Kael wanted to believe her. Gods. He wanted nothing more. But another voice echoed inside his mind. A king who ignores evidence destroys kingdoms. A ruler who chooses love over duty becomes a tyrant. His father's lessons returned like chains around his soul.
Duty.
Always duty.
He slowly stood.
Every noble immediately fell silent. His voice echoed through the enormous chamber. Elara. She looked up hopefully. The evidence before this council. He paused. The words suddenly felt heavier than any sword he had ever carried. Cannot be ignored. Hope disappeared from her eyes. Not all at once. Slowly, painfully, like a candle suffocating beneath rain. She whispered, So, you believe them? Kael never answered. Because he couldn't. If he admitted belief, he would destroy her. If he admitted doubt, he would destroy the kingdom. Either choice demanded sacrifice. The white wolf pup suddenly growled. The tiny creature stepped in front of Elara, bearing impossibly small teeth toward the gathered nobles. Several guards instinctively reached for their weapons.
No.
Elara knelt quickly beside him. She gently rested her hand against his head. We don't fight. The pup immediately relaxed. Even now, even while her own world collapsed,
she chose peace.
Kael watched the moment in silence. Something inside him screamed that none of this was right. Yet logic crushed instinct. Again, Lady Seraphine stepped closer. My king. She lowered her voice. The council awaits your judgment. Every eye turned toward the throne. Ironfang held its breath. Kael slowly closed his eyes. The roar did not belong to any creature born beneath the moon. It belonged to something older. Something that had waited beneath Ironfang Castle since before the first Alpha King claimed the throne. The earth split apart. Ancient stone walls collapsed into rivers of dust while black flames erupted through the palace courtyard like the kingdom itself had begun bleeding darkness. The sky turned crimson. Thunder rolled across the mountains, but no storm had gathered. The heavens were responding. Thousands of soldiers instinctively staggered backward. Horses screamed in terror. Even the wolves lowered themselves toward the frozen ground, ears flattened against their heads. Only one figure remained standing. Lady Seraphine. She appeared atop the shattered palace staircase, wearing a flowing black gown that danced unnaturally in the burning wind. The elegant noblewoman who had once hidden behind smiles had vanished. Dark veins stretched across her pale skin. Her emerald eyes had become pools of living shadow. Behind her, the ancient beast slowly emerged from beneath the castle. It towered over the palace walls. Its body appeared carved from smoke and obsidian, stitched together by crimson light that pulsed like a corrupted heartbeat. Its claws were larger than castle towers. Its eyes held no hatred, only endless hunger. Captain Rowan whispered, his voice barely audible. The Shadow Sovereign. Mother Lysandra's face turned deathly pale. I prayed that legend was false. It isn't, she answered herself. It was never a legend. Seraphine slowly lifted both hands toward the sky. For centuries. Her voice echoed unnaturally across the battlefield. My family guarded this kingdom's greatest secret. She laughed. While fools worshipped moon guardians and alpha kings, we served the only ruler worthy of this world. Dark energy wrapped around her body. The Shadow Sovereign. The creature answered with another earth-shaking roar. Entire sections of the palace collapsed beneath its voice alone. Panic erupted. Royal soldiers abandoned formation. Some fled. Others froze where they stood. The battlefield dissolved into chaos. Kael immediately drew his sword. His alpha aura exploded outward. The familiar pressure rolled across the battlefield like invisible thunder. For years, enemies had surrendered the moment they felt that overwhelming dominance. Today, the Shadow Sovereign simply stared at him, then smiled. Not with lips, with darkness itself. The beast slammed one colossal claw into the earth. The impact shattered the frozen ground. Dozens of soldiers were thrown through the air. Kael moved before anyone else reacted. He intercepted the attack, his enchanted blade colliding against the beast's claw in an explosion of silver sparks. The force sent him sliding backward across broken stone. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. For the first time in years, someone had overpowered the Alpha King. Protect the civilians. Kael roared. His command instantly cut through the panic. Captain Rowan rallied the remaining royal guard. Moon Guardians formed defensive circles around fleeing families. The wolves spread throughout the burning city, guiding frightened children away from collapsing buildings. Elara watched everything. Fire.
Fear. Death.
The kingdom she once believed had rejected her forever. A younger version of herself might have allowed hatred to speak. She had every reason, every wound, every betrayal. But Mother Lysandra's words echoed inside her heart. Queens return for their people. Not revenge. Protection. She looked toward Kael. He fought alone against impossible odds, refusing to retreat even as fresh wounds covered his body. The king who once ruled through fear now bled protecting people who could offer him nothing in return.
He had changed.
Just as she had. Elara stepped forward. The silver markings upon her arms suddenly began glowing brighter than ever before. Every wolf across the battlefield lifted its head simultaneously. The moon broke through crimson clouds. Its light fell directly upon her. The ancient power inside her blood awakened completely. Silver energy flowed across the battlefield like rivers of living moonlight. Mother Lysandra whispered through tears. The eternal bond. The wolves surrounded Elara. Not as soldiers, as guardians. The great white wolf, now fully grown, stood beside her. His silver eyes met hers. No words were needed. Together, they ran toward the Shadow Sovereign. Seraphine laughed. So this is your answer? She extended one hand. The monster unleashed a wave of black fire. It rushed across the battlefield, consuming everything in its path.
Kael saw it first.
He looked toward Elara. Toward the wolves, toward the innocent villagers trapped behind them. There wasn't enough time. Not for everyone. Unless he made one final choice. Mother Lysandra suddenly realized what he intended. No,
she cried.
Don't. But Kael had already planted his sword into the earth. He closed his eyes. Every Alpha King inherited one final gift. A forbidden sacrifice. Winter surrendered reluctantly. Beyond the frost divide, where no king's banner had flown for centuries, the snow began to melt beneath the pale light of an early spring moon. Streams carved silver paths through the mountains, carrying away the last traces of the season that had nearly claimed Elara's life. But the girl who stood atop the highest cliff was no longer the frightened Omega who had crossed those frozen lands months ago. The wind no longer pushed her backward. It flowed around her, as though recognizing its queen. Behind her, dozens of wolves stood in complete silence. Gray wolves, black wolves, snow-white wolves with glowing silver eyes.
Not one made a sound.
They waited only for her command. Below the cliff stretched the hidden sanctuary of the Moon Guardians, a village concealed beneath ancient enchanted forests where sunlight filtered through silver leaves and waterfalls glowed beneath moonstones embedded into the cliffs. For centuries, they had hidden from the world, waiting, watching, praying that one day the bloodline of their queen would return. That day had finally arrived. Months of relentless training had changed everything. Every sunrise began before dawn. Every lesson tested, not her strength, but her heart. The elderly guardian, known as Mother Lysandra, never placed a sword into Elara's hands. Instead, she taught her something far more dangerous. Power born from anger, she often said, creates another tyrant. Elara knelt beside a wounded wolf, her fingers glowing faintly with silver light. But power born from compassion, the animal's broken leg slowly healed beneath her touch, creates a protector. The wolf stood,
Healthy, whole.
It lowered its head respectfully before disappearing into the forest. Mother Lysandra smiled. Your mother would have been proud. Every mention of those words still hurt. Mother, a woman Elara had never known. A life stolen before memory could preserve it. Each passing week awakened another forgotten gift sleeping inside her blood. She learned to hear wolves long before they appeared, to sense fear hidden behind smiles, to feel eyes vibrating through the air like broken strings. Even the moon itself seemed different. Whenever its silver light touched her skin, ancient markings briefly shimmered across her arms before fading again. The guardians called it the Moon Queen's blessing. Not everyone believed she was ready. Many warriors questioned whether an Omega raised as a servant could truly lead them. Until the trial of the Alpha Forest. A monstrous shadow bear, corrupted by ancient darkness, emerged from the northern woods and attacked the sanctuary. The beast towered over every guardian. Its eyes burned crimson. Its claws shattered stone. Warriors rushed forward. Several were thrown aside within seconds. Mother Lysandra shouted, "Fall back." But Elara walked forward alone. No weapon, no armor, only calm. The shadow bear roared so violently the earth trembled beneath its feet. The wolves around her growled, waiting. One command, one battle. Instead, Elara slowly raised one hand. "I know you're hurting." The beast charged. The guardian screamed. At the very last moment, silver light burst from Elara's body, not as a weapon, as warmth. The corrupted darkness surrounding the beast cracked apart like ice beneath spring sunlight. Its furious roar became a cry of pain. Then, silence. The enormous creature collapsed before her. Not dead. Freed. Tears filled the beast's ancient eyes before it quietly disappeared into the forest. No sword had been raised. No blood spilled. Every guardian watching slowly knelt. Not because she defeated a monster, because she healed one. At that moment, no one questioned their queen again. Far to the south, Iron Fong burned. Black smoke swallowed the capital. Lady Seraphine's coup had spread like poison through every province. Loyal generals hung from castle walls. Villages that refused allegiance disappeared beneath fire. Families fled through forests carrying children and little else. The Kingdom Kael had spent years protecting, was dying. Within the ruined throne room, Kael stood beside Captain Rowan studying maps scattered across a cracked stone table. Their once mighty army had been reduced by betrayal. Half the royal commanders had pledged loyalty to Seraphine. The others had fallen defending civilians. "We've lost the eastern border." Rowan's voice sounded exhausted. "The western keeps surrendered yesterday." Kael remained silent. Another messenger entered. "My king." He swallowed painfully. "The northern refugees request protection. We have no soldiers left." The messenger lowered his head. "I know." Silence settled over the room. The Alpha King looked older than he had only months earlier. Not because of battle, because regret had become heavier than armor. Every night, he returned to the abandoned stable. Every night, he remembered the frightened Omega who had trusted him completely. Every night, he heard her final words. Perhaps I never knew you at all. No battlefield had ever wounded him so deeply. One stormy evening, a frightened child burst into the palace courtyard. Wolves. Guards immediately reached for weapons. The forests are full of wolves. Panic spread instantly. They're attacking? The child shook his head. No. His voice trembled. They're protecting people. Confused silence followed. Refugees soon arrived carrying the same unbelievable story. Entire villages had escaped Seraphine's soldiers because enormous wolves guided them safely through hidden mountain paths. No attacks. No bloodshed. Only protection. Captain Rowan looked toward Kael. There is only one person they would obey. Hope, a feeling Kael had almost forgotten, returned. Beyond the northern mountains, Mother Lysandra approached Elara beneath the sacred moon tree. Its silver branches shimmered softly beneath the night sky. The kingdom calls for you. Elara looked south, toward Ironfang, toward the home that had cast her aside. They banished me. They did. They believed lies. They did. They abandoned innocent people. They did. Elara remained silent for a long time. Anger would have been easier. Hatred would have hurt less. Yet every refugee arriving at the sanctuary carried the same terrified expression she once had. Children, mothers, old men, none responsible for the king's mistake. Mother Lysandra gently rested a hand upon her shoulder. Queens do not return for revenge. She smiled softly. They return for their people. Something inside Elara settled. The frightened servant disappeared forever. When she finally spoke, her voice carried quiet authority. We leave before sunrise. Every wolf across the valley lifted its head. One by one, thousands answered. Their howls rolled across the mountains like an army announcing its arrival. 3 days later, Seraphine's soldiers surrounded the village of Hollow Creek. Families huddled inside burning homes while armored soldiers laughed outside the gates. Anyone loyal to Kael dies tonight. The captain raised his torch. Before it touched the wooden gate, a howl echoed across the valley. Every soldier froze. Another answered, then another, until the mountains themselves seemed alive. From the surrounding forests emerged hundreds of wolves. Not charging, marching, perfectly organized. Behind them rode warriors cloaked in silver, moon guardians. At their center, a white wolf nearly twice the size of any ordinary beast walked proudly through the smoke. Beside him, a young woman wearing silver armor embroidered with moonlight stepped calmly onto the battlefield. Long dark hair flowed behind her. Ancient silver markings glowed faintly across her wrists. Her eyes, once timid, now carried quiet confidence. She no longer resembled the servant banished months ago. She looked like royalty. Seraphine's soldiers hesitated. One whispered, "Who is she?" An elderly villager fell to his knees. The Moon Queen. The title spread through the crowd, like hope itself. Elara raised one hand. The wolves stopped instantly. No roar. No unnecessary violence. Only complete obedience. She looked at the terrified enemy soldiers. You still have a choice. Her calm voice carried across the battlefield. Lay down your weapons. Several laughed nervously. Their captain sneered. You're only an Omega. He charged. Before he could reach her, the massive white wolf stepped between them with a thunderous growl that shook the entire valley. The captain stumbled backward in terror. His sword slipped from trembling fingers. Every remaining soldier immediately threw down their weapons. Not defeated by fear alone, by certainty. Something ancient had returned. News spread faster than wildfire. The Moon Queen has returned. The wolves march beside her. Villages are being liberated. Hope lives. Inside Ironfang Palace, Kael stood upon the highest tower, watching distant smoke rise beyond the northern forests. Captain Rowan appeared beside him. They're here. Kael's heartbeat quickened.
Who?
Rowan smiled for the first time in months. Our salvation. The following evening, snow fell gently across the ruined plains outside Ironfang. Broken siege engines burned beneath the fading sunset. Thousands of exhausted royal soldiers formed defensive lines. Across the battlefield, an army of silver-cloaked moon guardians emerged from the mist. Wolves padded silently between their ranks. At their center, Elara. Neither army moved. Neither leader spoke. The wind carried only the sound of falling snow. Kael slowly stepped forward, removing his crown, removing his sword, removing every symbol of power.
Then,
Before two armies, before every noble, before every soldier who had once feared him, the Alpha King dropped to one knee. He bowed his head, not to a conqueror, not to a queen, to the woman he had failed. I was wrong. The words barely rose above the wind. I chose duty. His voice broke. When I should have chosen truth. Silence swallowed the battlefield. Tears gathered in Elara's eyes. Months of pain, loneliness, love, regret, all stood between them. She took one slow step forward, then another. For a heartbeat, it seemed forgiveness might finally begin. Suddenly, the earth exploded. A deafening roar shattered the silence. The palace gates behind Kael burst apart as black fire erupted into the sky. From beneath Ironfang Castle, a colossal shadow beast clawed its way into the world. Its crimson eyes opened, and Lady Seraphine's laughter echoed across the burning capital. The prophecy, she cried from the palace walls, ends tonight. The final battle had begun. The roar did not belong to any creature born beneath the moon. It belonged to something older. Something that had waited beneath Ironfang Castle since before the first Alpha King claimed the throne. The earth split apart. Ancient stone walls collapsed into rivers of dust while black flames erupted through the palace courtyard like the kingdom itself had begun bleeding darkness. The sky turned crimson. Thunder rolled across the mountains, but no storm had gathered. The heavens were responding. Thousands of soldiers instinctively staggered backward. Horses screamed in terror. Even the wolves lowered themselves toward the frozen ground, ears flattened against their heads. Only one figure remained standing. Lady Seraphine. She appeared atop the shattered palace staircase, wearing a flowing black gown that danced unnaturally in the burning wind. The elegant noblewoman who had once hidden behind smiles had vanished. Dark veins stretched across her pale skin. Her emerald eyes had become pools of living shadow. Behind her, the ancient beast slowly emerged from beneath the castle. It towered over the palace walls. Its body appeared carved from smoke and obsidian, stitched together by crimson light that pulsed like a corrupted heartbeat. Its claws were larger than castle towers. Its eyes held no hatred, only endless hunger. Captain Rowan whispered, his voice barely audible. The Shadow Sovereign. Mother Lysandra's face turned deathly pale. I prayed that legend was false. It isn't, she answered herself. It was never a legend. Seraphine slowly lifted both hands toward the sky. For centuries, her voice echoed unnaturally across the battlefield. My family guarded this kingdom's greatest secret. She laughed. While fools worshipped moon guardians and alpha kings, we served the only ruler worthy of this world. Dark energy wrapped around her body. The Shadow Sovereign. The creature answered with another earth-shaking roar. Entire sections of the palace collapsed beneath its voice alone. Panic erupted. Royal soldiers abandoned formation. Some fled. Others froze where they stood. The battlefield dissolved into chaos. Kael immediately drew his sword. His alpha aura exploded outward. The familiar pressure rolled across the battlefield like invisible thunder. For years, enemies had surrendered the moment they felt that overwhelming dominance. Today, the Shadow Sovereign simply stared at him, then smiled. Not with lips, with darkness itself. The beast slammed one colossal claw into the earth. The impact shattered the frozen ground. Dozens of soldiers were thrown through the air. Kael moved before anyone else reacted. He intercepted the attack, his enchanted blade colliding against the beast's claw in an explosion of silver sparks. The force sent him sliding backward across broken stone. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. For the first time in years, someone had overpowered the Alpha King. "Protect the civilians," Kael roared. His command instantly cut through the panic. Captain Rowan rallied the remaining royal guard. Moon Guardians formed defensive circles around fleeing families. The wolves spread throughout the burning city, guiding frightened children away from collapsing buildings. Elara watched everything. Fire.
Fear. Death.
The kingdom she once believed had rejected her forever. A younger version of herself might have allowed hatred to speak. She had every reason, every wound, every betrayal. But Mother Lysandra's words echoed inside her heart. Queens return for their people. Not revenge. Protection. She looked toward Kael. He fought alone against impossible odds, refusing to retreat even as fresh wounds covered his body. The king who once ruled through fear now bled protecting people who could offer him nothing in return.
He had changed.
Just as she had. Elara stepped forward. The silver markings upon her arms suddenly began glowing brighter than ever before. Every wolf across the battlefield lifted its head simultaneously. The moon broke through crimson clouds. Its light fell directly upon her. The ancient power inside her blood awakened completely. Silver energy flowed across the battlefield like rivers of living moonlight. Mother Lysandra whispered through tears, "The eternal bond." The wolves surrounded Elara, not as soldiers, as guardians. The great white wolf, now fully grown, stood beside her. His silver eyes met hers. No words were needed. Together, they ran toward the Shadow Sovereign. Seraphine laughed. "So this is your answer?" She extended one hand. The monster unleashed a wave of black fire. It rushed across the battlefield, consuming everything in its path.
Kael saw it first.
He looked toward Elara, toward the wolves, toward the innocent villagers trapped behind them. There wasn't enough time. Not for everyone. Unless he made one final choice. Mother Lysandra suddenly realized what he intended. "No,"
she cried.
"Don't." But Kael had already planted his sword into the earth. He closed his eyes. Every Alpha King inherited one final gift. A forbidden sacrifice. The heart of the Alpha. A king could surrender every ounce of his alpha dominance, every instinct, every supernatural strength, to protect another. No Alpha had survived the ritual. Kael smiled faintly, not because he welcomed death, because, for the first time since losing his family, he knew exactly what kind of man he wished to become. He looked toward Elara. Their eyes met across the burning battlefield. "I failed you once." His quiet voice somehow reached her through the chaos. "I won't fail you again." Silver light erupted from his body. His alpha aura shattered into thousands of glowing fragments that raced across the battlefield. The wave of darkness collided against that light. Instead of consuming the civilians, it struck Kael alone. The explosion swallowed him completely. "Kael!" Elara screamed. Everything became silent. The battlefield disappeared beneath blinding silver light. When it finally faded, Kael remained standing. Barely. His sword had turned to ash. The overwhelming alpha presence that once terrified kingdoms
was gone.
Completely. He had given away everything. His knees buckled. Blood stained the snow beneath him. Yet behind him, every civilian still lived. Seraphine stared in disbelief. "You," she whispered. "You abandoned your power?" Kael smiled weakly. "I chose." He struggled for breath. "My people." Something extraordinary happened. The moon responded. The fragments of Kael's sacrificed alpha power drifted toward Elara. Instead of disappearing, they merged with the silver light surrounding her. Not to make her stronger, but to complete something unfinished. The eternal bond. Ancient symbols appeared beneath both of them. The earth trembled. Every wolf howled. Every surviving moon guardian knelt. The sky itself seemed to open. Elara rushed to Kael's side, catching him before he collapsed. Tears streamed freely down her face. "You fool," she whispered, gently touching his blood-covered cheek. "You should have let me fight." He smiled. "I wasn't protecting." He coughed painfully. "The queen." His fingers weakly found hers. "I was protecting." A tear escaped his eye. "The woman I love." Those words shattered the final wall around Elara's heart. She leaned forward, resting her forehead gently against his. "I never stopped loving you." The eternal bond awakened. Not through war, not through dominance, through sacrifice. Moonlight exploded across the battlefield. The silver energy surged through every crack in the earth, every ruined wall, every frightened soul. It reached the Shadow Sovereign. The ancient monster roared in agony. Darkness peeled away from its enormous body like smoke carried by the wind. Beneath the corruption, a magnificent, celestial wolf emerged. Its eyes no longer burned crimson. They shone silver. Peacefully, the beast lowered its massive head toward Elara and Kael, then slowly dissolved into countless glowing stars that disappeared into the night sky. The curse was finally broken. Seraphine stumbled backward. "No." Her carefully built empire collapsed around her. "No." She reached desperately for the remaining shadows. Nothing answered. The darkness she had worshipped abandoned her. Royal guards surrounded her. Moon guardians closed every escape. She looked toward Elara with pure hatred. "This should have been mine." Elara met her gaze calmly.
"No."
Her voice held neither anger nor triumph. "It was never yours to take." Seraphine was led away as the first rays of dawn broke over Ironfang. Weeks later, the kingdom looked different. Not because every building had been rebuilt. Many still carried the scars of war. But laughter had returned. Markets reopened. Children played within palace gardens once stained by fear. The Iron Throne remained inside the Great Hall. Yet Kael rarely sat upon it. Instead, he walked among his people without armor, without the crushing alpha aura that once demanded obedience. They no longer feared him. They respected him. Beside him walked Queen Elara, not crowned because of prophecy, not because of blood, because she had chosen compassion when revenge would have been easier. One quiet evening, they returned to the place where everything had begun. The abandoned stable. The broken roof had been repaired. Fresh hay covered the floor. Wildflowers surrounded the entrance. At the center stood a simple white stone. No royal title. No grand monument. Only one inscription. To the mother who guarded destiny before the world could see it. The great white wolf rested peacefully beside the memorial. Elara knelt, placing fresh moon lilies at its base. Kael stood beside her, gently taking her hand. For a long moment, neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence carried gratitude. Healing. Home. Above them, wolves began howling across the northern mountains. Not as a warning, as a blessing. The camera slowly rose above Ironfang Kingdom. Snow-covered peaks shimmered beneath the full moon. The rebuilt castle stood proudly in the distance. A kingdom once ruled by fear, now ruled by hope. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a newborn wolf answered the ancient howl. As the screen slowly faded to black, one final line appeared. Sometimes destiny doesn't choose the strongest soul, it chooses the kindest one.
The end.